Well, hey there, big guy.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm doing just well.
Superb.
I'm fine.
Superb. Well, happy September to all of you members out there. You definitely already have your bottles. So we are shooting this just a tad late. And we are getting this out there as we bottle our October pours as well. But kind of an interesting take on this month. Something that we don't drink a lot of.
No.
For the society pour this month, we poured the Basil Haden's Toast. I have explored Basil Haden's for quite some time. As you can see, we have a variety here, and I actually think there's a couple other bottles I just didn't pull down. But we have 10-year, the dark rye, the Caribbean rye, some toast, different stuff that we have down here. But for me, Basil Haden's has always been something that's been decent, but not my profile. It's got more of a cereal note. It's a high rye. It's cut super low.
Yeah.
So for Beam Suntory, so they bring you Baker's, Knob Creek, Booker's, like they all come from the same family. But this is cut to the lowest proof of any offering from Beam Suntory. So this is an 80 proof bourbon, usually across the board. And it's just not my normal go-to. But it's funny I say that because then I turn around and go like, we've got some cool memories in these bottles too.
We do.
So of all of them, when I think about like what is the most approachable introductory pour for their bourbons, if you're not a high rye person and you don't appreciate some of that cereal, high cinnamon, high spice note, Toast calms that down a little bit more for the bourbon drinker, mainly because it replaces the rye in the mash bill. So it's 63% corn. Let me get the number real quick because it's like, I don't think you can put it on there. It's like 27%
brown rice.
It's brown rice.
Yeah.
So they substitute brown rice over the high rye. The rest is malted barley. And that kind of changes a lot of the mouthfeel. It changes the finish. It changes the roundness on the end of the drink. And I think makes it a much more complex, low proof whiskey than some of their other offerings.
Well, it's easy drinking.
It's super easy drinking with full flavor. So we brought the Toast to you this month. It is pretty approachable from a price standpoint. It's also kind of easier to find now.
It's becoming more and more available.
Yeah. When it first launched, it was like grab one while you can. The longer it's been out, the more it's available.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's because it doesn't taste great. I think it's just because people tried it and moved on, and they keep trying to find hard to find things. This isn't necessarily hard to find, but it is extremely tasty.
Absolutely.
And unique in the fact that, again, you're not seeing a ton of mainstream whiskeys being made with brown rice.
No. Well, and you're not seeing a lot of toasted. I mean, Michter's has a toasted, Basil Haden has a toasted.
Yeah, well, the heavy toast stuff usually brings a premium.
Sure.
They say heavy toasted, it gives complexity of the flavor, and now you're going to pay twice as much for the same whiskey.
But not with Basil Haden.
But now with Basil
much
Haden's
more affordable toasted bourbon.
So you're typically going to find, I think I left the regular Basil Haden's up there. This is the old label 10-year. So this is the 10-year back in the day. This is the new updated label for the 10-year. We've got another toast back here. This guy,
that's interesting.
The Caribbean Reserve Rye, crazy whiskey. We bought this guy down. We went to go see a concert in Morro Bay and just bought this as our weekend sippers. And it is a combination of an American rye, Kentucky rye, a Canadian, and finished with actually adding some blackstrap rum into the mix. Not barrel finished, but adding actual rum, but still cut to 80 proof.
I mean, the only reason why we picked it up was because it was so unique. Yeah. And we'd never seen anything like it, so it was like, well, we got to try that.
Yeah, so...
and we were by the ocean, so...
Yeah, we were literally on the ocean.
Yeah, bourbon and rum.
Great time to have it. So, again, you can have fun with Basil Haden's. It's just a very different mash bill. It's and it's also just, it's cut to a much easier drinking level. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and pour Look, I also think to the average, like you're going to buy this guy as a gift or something like that. I think the kind of belt buckle, metal strap, BH kind of labeling looks impressive. Like it's a pretty, I especially like the new labeling. Like it's a bigger Basil Haden's. It looks like you spent a lot of money. But in typical, you're talking $45-ish. This is going to be this blended guy that you guys, yeah, $70-$80.
Yeah.
And I think the 10-year now is somewhere in that $65 to $70 range. But nothing outrageous for a 10-year, really good mash bill whiskey. It's a great starter.
Well, from a very historical family of whiskeys, and I also think the Basil Hayden regular you're going to find anywhere. I mean that's pretty much everywhere.
Well, and here's the other thing, crazy. Basil Hayden's. I remember Basil Hayden's as a name forever. Like in my brain, I thought it was a much older whiskey, created in 1992. So my junior year of high school, Basil Hayden's came out, and named after Basil Hayden Sr., who was a big-time distiller back in 1785. He was a Catholic that had land in part of Maryland that he then kind of donated, and that land ended up becoming part of what is now the Commonwealth of Kentucky through the Catholic Church, and they began distilling on that land, several years later, and so kind of a cool, again, all these stories have to do with a handful of men who owned a lot of land and donated stuff and did whatever.
Heavy in the church.
Yeah, a lot of religious guys, right? It's kind of crazy how that works out.
Yeah.
So they basically started Kentucky, their distillery there. Later, his grandson also started another label called Old Granddad. You may have seen it, called Old Granddad 114. And the picture of the guy that is the Old Granddad is the original Basil Hayden Sr.
Yeah.
Right. So like he is.
That blew my mind.
That
was incredible.
Yeah, kind of a cool
tie into that.
Kind of a cool story how incestuous all of this whiskey story is.
Yeah.
Through
and everything we pour to a certain degree.
Yeah.
I mean, when you start looking at the bigger brands.
So this guy again, the one thing that I get right away is the fact that it is lower proof. You don't get an immediate ethanol alcohol kind of burn through your nose when you taste it. And this hasn't sat at all. We just poured it, and it really doesn't have to sit nearly as long for it to not be kind of like that. Man, I gotta let that burn off a little bit. Right away, I get like the light brown sugar, caramel toffee, a little bit. And look, I don't want to use the name of the thing. I'm not like promoting things, but one of the tasters that once you taste it and once you smell it again really comes through. They keep saying it's buttered toast. Buttered toast because of that lightness. There is like a buttery kind of front end to it. You smell that kind of like sourdoughy, bready kind of thing. So buttered toast is a great descriptor. It's not because the name of the thing is called toast. That literally has to do with just the way that
I get a little shortbread.
Yeah. A little sweetness gives you shortbread.
Yeah.
And that's some of that butteriness. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So as you begin to sip it, you're going to get some butterscotch, some sweet bread. Again, very much like the old Stellum that we poured for the Fox and Pheasant Club, as opposed to vanilla and some of like when you get that vanilla extract kind of, this is more almond.
Yeah.
And I think that has a lot to do with the brown rice, and that's on the actual taste.
Yeah, get that toasted.
So again, it's really easy to drink.
Yeah, very smooth.
There's an almost acidic finish where a lot of your heavier toasted bourbons that we drink take a really deep, heavy profile flavors. So maple, vanilla, chocolate, caramel, like all these things. This is a much lighter note. Sure. So it kind of, it's weird, but in my brain, like instead of going like down, like this like depth of flavor, it tends to kind of go up, like with an acidity or a cereal note still. And I'm curious again if that's the effect of the brown rice or if it's the lighter proof. But the profiles tend to be a little more delicate and a little bit more acidic. And I keep acidic to me is kind of like the finish for that. Almost like there's a burnt orange peel in there or something like it. Not in my descriptors, but I'm getting it right now. Finish-wise, mild cinnamon, some hazelnut. You get leather, especially after it sits for a minute.
It's just it's a great introductory whiskey to have with folks that, aren't really whiskey drinkers. I mean, I think this is something that would appeal to a wide audience.
Yeah, I think
which is probably why they created it in the first place, was to introduce, more people to kind of a sweeter, easier drinking whiskey. But I get caught up on the 80 proof portion of it because when I think 80 proof, I think your typical kind of whiskeys, your Black Label Jack Daniels and things of that nature. It just doesn't have the bite.
I like to think about it as the evolution of us as partakers. I think there's a point in our lives where we go, the beer we drink are IPAs, and if it's not over 7%, we're not going to like it. The older we get, we realize that just gives me headaches and makes me feel bloated.
And now I'm drinking seltzer.
Right, but that's my point. It's stopping seeking the only thing that makes you happy, and start to seek things that are interesting and kind of change your mind about things. And I think as much as the rage is now for barrel proof this and 132, proof. We took the wood chips out of it, and then you're drinking it straight out the thing, right? This is cut to a very drinkable, very balanced profile where I don't have to throw ice in it, to enjoy it. I can drink it just like this, as it was cut, and not have to add ice to make it more drinkable.
Well, it's interesting that you bring that up because I think, there was a movement a while back around light whiskeys. And the whole light whiskey movement was to be more drinkable. To match up with other kind of light alcohols that people could drink and enjoy, and Basil Haden I think fits that bill.
Well, true, but before somebody calls us out with the three people who watch this won't.
Yeah, it's not a light whiskey, by the way.
No, but light whiskey is light based on the mash bill, but often at a very high proof.
Absolutely. Yes.
So it wasn't about necessarily making a very drinkable. Easy, low profile alcohol.
Well, it was about making it drinkable.
Yeah, but they're
not with low proof.
Yeah, they're 120, 30% thing. This is simply a philosophy of, look, there's a reason that many bourbons are cut to 90 proof, and at one point that was considered the sweet spot of making the perfect bourbon or the perfect American whiskey. Some, based on the way they made whiskey, thought it needed to be a little lower proof. Some people thought 100 proof bottle and bond was the best way to showcase the distiller's skill. There's no right or wrong answer.
Absolutely not.
And there's nothing you should or should not drink. And I think that we have often scoffed.
We've been bougie in some areas.
Yeah, at the lighter proof stuff. And I think Basil Haden Toast stands up despite its lower proof.
Absolutely.
From a complexity of cinnamon and almond and buttered bread and buttered toast that I think is an interesting drink, and it's something that we actually drink more often.
And we wouldn't have featured it if we didn't feel that way.
Yeah.
And also know that every single one of Basil Haden offerings is 80 proof.
Yeah.
I mean, even the 10 years, this Caribbean,
it's what they cut it to.
It's kind of what that's what it is.
So their tagline that they use is a Booker Noe quote. And Booker Noe, one of the most
we've featured Bookers, and we've
most notorious.
Book and
we've definitely done the Bookers, and that's all uncut and unfiltered. Meaning it's almost oily, man. That is a wood chips out only, and that's the deal. And so you're talking about a mash bill that, from a different standpoint, Booker's is where you get it full proof and absolutely straight out the barrel. And then you turn around, you got Basil Haden's that's cut to 80 proof, and you get to taste it both ways. They add a little bit more rye to the mash bill in this guy, but you know, it's cool that they balance out their offerings that way to kind of present their whiskey in different ways.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, like if you'd have told me that we would have been drinking Basil Hayden's Toast and really enjoying it 3 years ago, I'd have been like, yeah, probably not my thing.
Yeah.
But I actually really enjoy it. I had some last week just for myself as we were watching some movies. And I definitely find myself kind of revisiting this stuff more often now that I've drank up more whiskey than I ever thought I would.
Well, you brought up a really good point. I think the fact that, you know, the mash bill is similar with a lot of what they offer, and Basil Hayden is the 80 proof version of the juice, and then you're moving up the ladder to more high proofs, but it's similar mash bills.
Yeah, so again, I remember I was going with that. Booker Noe, for Basil Hayden, is their catchphrase.
Yeah.
Is Booker's famous quote of, "Pour me another one and tell me a story." And with that, I think Basil Hayden's is something that you can actually pour another one and have the ability to tell a story.
That's an excellent point.
Yeah, so maybe
you can have a couple of these and tell a story.
Yeah, so maybe this is the one that you want to settle into in your nice leather chair and get ready with some friends to have a great night, because it's not going to put you to sleep before you know it. So.
Well, and Basil Hayden toasted is probably a really good bourbon to sip on during Halloween.
Oh, I think
it's
so.
Sweet. Yeah. I think it goes with different candies and different things, and you know, if you're opening up the door and doing that kind of thing,
you'll also make it to the last trick or treat.
You will make it to the last trick or treat.
So excellent point, sir. And I think I'll end with that sage-like advice of a lower proof for a night you know you have to post.
That's right.
Great. So, guys, it's great talking to you again. We hope you enjoy your Basil Hayden's introduction, and we will see you again here in a couple weeks with our October pour.
Yeah.
All right.
Cheers.
Cheers.